This is the video of Fiona's 2017 to 18 cruise. We had a slight mishap at the beginning that delayed us by a few weeks, which you'll learn about. But then we left New York and sailed directly to the Azores. We had a delightful 6-week cruise of the Azores. We stopped at every island but one in that archipelago. And then when we left the Azores, we sailed to another favourite, Madeira Island. After a couple of weeks there, we sailed to the south coast of Portugal, which was new for me. It's called the Algarve, very popular with tourists, particularly Brits. We then worked our way up to Lisbon and I flew home for Christmas. When I came back in the new year, I had a new crew. We went back to Madeira and then sailed down via a remote island called the Salvagens to La Gomera in the Canaries. And then we had a rather slow trip, not very good winds, to Mindelo in the Cape Verdes. We'd no serious mishaps crossing the Atlantic. The new crew, one of them had never crossed the Atlantic before in the tropics and met his first flying fish. We arrived at St. Lucia and worked our way up the northern Caribbean islands, the Leeward group. And when we arrived at St. Martin, we found terrible damage from Hurricane Irma and also in the BVI. It was devastating to see it. They'd not fully recovered, even though it was nearly a year before. We then sailed to Bermuda and then off to New York. A 10,000-mile trip that went with any serious mishaps apart from the beginning. This is a trip that nearly didn't occur. We launched the boat on a Monday afternoon. The yard gang went home. I went down and checked the bilge. It seemed okay. In the morning, I got a panic call from the yard. The boat had sank in the travel lift slip and was resting on the bottom. When I got down there, I stepped on board. There was water up to my knees in the main cabin, over the engine in the engine room, and if the engine had been irreparably damaged, the trip was off. I got my son to turn the engine over by hand a few times, change the oil a few times, and fortunately it fired up. So we'd cleaned all the stuff up on deck, we put it back in the water, and then when we checked the transmission it was leaking fluid. So that meant the engine had to come out. That meant we had to take the steering system apart, lift it all out, and send it to an expert for evaluation. Well, the engine was out. My good neighbour John Cunan cleaned up about 20 years of dirt and mould from the engine room, and a new crew member, Neil Nash, showed up and he got stuck with the paintbrush to paint the engine. When we got the transmission back, we popped it all back into place and launched the boat, and it all seemed fine. That whole episode had cost us 5 weeks, and so we cancelled the first part of the planned trip to Canada and instead sailed directly to the Azores. Okay, 12-street ride. As usual, Bob Lyons and his old boat Fireplace escorted us down the river and into the bay. We've arrived in Block Island. There's Tim, one of the new crew, and sitting on the other side is Neil, another of the new crew. Both of them have signed up for the trip as far as Portugal, probably in about 4 months' time. This is our third day since we left Block Island. It's Thursday. We left on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, so I guess it's our fourth day. And we had fairly strong winds yesterday, but before that we had calms. We ran for a day and a half on the engine. This is Tim, who's going to go through the classic manoeuvre of throwing a message in a bottle over the side. I finished off the rum.
Yeah.
and he uses the empty bottle. So off you go, Tim.
All right.
We're about 58 west and about 40 and a half north, so that's going to wind up in Europe somewhere, that bottle. I've done it myself, or other crew members have done it over the years, and nobody has ever replied. So probably they wind up broken. Live music on the way to the Azores. We're sailing in high pressure, about 500 miles from Flores. We've still got about a day's worth of fuel left, so we need some wind to get there. You can see there's not much wind here. And here's Tim. We've been reading a book
How's it going?
all the way across the Atlantic. On our port beam is Flores. Looks mysterious, full of trolls. And down there on that point is Lashes, where hopefully there's a slip waiting for us. I'm here at Lashes at the marina, and it's been a bit of a disappointment. You can see that there's Fiona in the middle and not many other boats. There are actually 4 foreign cruising boats here. One of them's stuck here because of engine trouble anyway.
Hey.
This is our tour
Hey.
of the island. Unfortunately, the top of it's covered with cloud, as you can see here. But there's still plenty to do. Unfortunately, again, this is now the 1st of September and the hydrangeas have all withered away. Still some flowers left. One feature of Flores are the stone walls put here over the centuries. Look at this little hut. There's another one down there. The labour to do all this, mind-boggling. I upgraded our sign on the Horta breakwater wall. You can see we've got 2017 here, and here's a shot of the wall itself. Still pretty impressive. And there's the marina. Fiona buried in there somewhere. Here's a nice view of Horta on the island of Fayal. There. There's the marina. This is the view from Fayal of the 9,000 foot volcano called Pico. Here's the caldera at Fayal. You can see it's quite huge. I believe when we came here first back in the 80s, the lighthouse was half covered with ash, but they've dug it out and made it a presumably functional lighthouse again. This is Velas on the island of St. George. And down there you can just make out Fiona. This is the bandshell that most Portuguese towns seem to have, and this has been kept up beautifully. Flowers everywhere. What is it for? Ah, it's full of birds. Overlooking Angro de Horismo, we climbed up the hill to see the World War II guns put there by the British. Hello, Polly. There's a small aviary here at the top of Monte Brasil. Some more birds down there. And also here. Look, the parrot looks like the best, except it's very quiet. Pretty Polly, come on, say something. This parrot's dead. Here are the guns, I remember, on my last trip up here. I think they were put in by the British to defend the airfield that they built here at Tessert from the Vichy French in World War II. Somebody's keeping them in good shape. Looks like the mechanism's been greased. There, see? Actually, the airfield is probably 30 miles away. The streets of Angra are rather narrow, but nevertheless, cars come up and down all the time. I'll have to see if I can get a shot of one. You just have to squeeze up against the wall. Here comes a car down the street. I just one of these days they're going to have to knock all these buildings down to make more room for cars. Very attractive way of getting down to the beach here. Very nice beach. Here the ducks come for some food. So they finally came. Unfortunately, we don't have any food on the table at the moment. I don't think they like beer too much. However, we'll get some for you. Hang around. Early in the morning at the car rental place, and Neil is going to rent a motorbike. So,
Watch me go.
right. Here's a shot of the marina. The owner is right there in the middle. And this little ferry came in last night. Now you can see the cruise ship that came in. They've got a collection of 50 stuff here. Mostly. There's a field kitchen. There's a Lister generator, 15 kilowatt, 230 volt, 3-phase. Here's a radar set built in Canada. And then a number of 20mm and even a 40mm cannon there. And then a couple of trucks made by Mercedes-Benz. We saw a little obscure sign on the highway that said Hydroelectric Museum, and after a little searching we found this place, a hydroelectric plant, and there's the generator. And here's the switch gear. And there's the transmission line leading outside. There we go. 200 volt
250s full scale. And there's the amps, up to 150 amps. Pretty substantial. This shows the revolutions per minute. Here's a few old meters that presumably were attached to different houses that they paid for electricity. We're at the Lago de Furnace, and you can see that there are pools of boiling mud here. This is the caldera, but just at this point there's plenty of mud boiling away, and the whole place smells of sulphur and water. Been up due to volcanic activity down below somewhere. Unfortunately, it started to rain. Here are people cooking meals in the hot earth. See, it says Tony's restaurant there. You bake it for a few hours, slowly simmered something, and you have a meal cooked by volcanic thermal activity. Lunch in a town called Furnace, where we're having a pizza. Some of them are drinking beer.
Here's an old medieval looking church, but unfortunately it was buttoned up tight. We couldn't get inside.
This is a tea factory. The only one left in the Azores. In the 1880s they imported Chinese experts who showed them how to grow tea. You can see some of the terraced tea leaves, tea plants there. And then they built this little factory and they dry it. I'll show you the dryer in a minute. Here's the tea dryer.
Here are ladies filling tea bags. And here's the Chinaman that showed them how to do it in the 1880s.
They brought in the 1880s to tell them how to make tea. We're approaching Santa Maria, the most southerly of the Azores, and the first one they colonised. We sailed overnight from San Miguel, and it blew hard during the night. And there's the little village of Puerto Vila. This is a shot from Fiona's Slip at Vila de Porto on Santa Maria Island, the most southerly of the Azores. First to be discovered. I think it was colonised in 1431, so it's very old. And they built the village to defend itself from foreign aggressors and pirates. Here you can see the march up to the village is quite a hike up that hill, and then you can see they've got a few guns sticking out. That, of course, that's just for the tourists. Here's the harbour of Vila de Porto from the headland. Fiona's there, the boat in the middle. This is the fort overlooking the harbour. I think at one time these cannons must have been very important. They certainly command a good field of fire. Of course, the jetties weren't here then. This was just a bay. This is Funchal coming up in Madeira. And to the west of Funchal are some of the tallest cliffs in Europe here. I believe over nearly 2,000 feet, I believe. They're certainly spectacular. They look like they came straight out of the sea. Fortunately, I told Tim and Neil when we were bound for Madeira that it was a bit like Skull Island in the King Kong movie, the original 1932 movie. And this certainly looks like it there, this valley here. Madeira is a major exporter of bananas, and they use the old terraces. You can see the old terraces up there, full of banana plants, which of course I remember from a previous tour pointed out to us that they're not seasonal, so they can grow bananas all year round. We're about 2,000 feet up here. You can see it's very calm. And since I was here, they've built this viewing platform, which has got a glass floor, so you can look right down 2,000 feet. If you suffer from vertigo, you have a problem. I don't know if you can see down there. This is looking to the east. Funchal is around that cape there. We sailed here Friday. You can see some bits of terracing there. I'm always fascinated by the terraces that were built centuries ago. Another stop on our tour of the south coast. This is Ribeira Brava. Nice church. Yeah. This is the actual River Brava. Lots of ducks. We've arrived on the north coast. Small island there with a lighthouse. 200 years ago, this was a very popular stopping point for the Royal Navy when they had sail ships, and this alleyway here is about where the original waterfront was. And we found a ship's chandlery that looked like Nelson could have visited there. You can see the old wooden beams, black with age, and it's still functioning as a chandlery. They did leave as a memory of the people that first started this place in the 1400s. Some foundations, here they are. You can see the foundations. Very small little buildings. Most rooms are no more than 8 to 10 feet square. This is the Electricity Museum in Funchal. When they went more or less permanently to hydro, they abandoned all this fossil fuel stuff here. That generator there, for example, 750 kilowatts, built in Stockport, England, ran for more than 30 years. Here's the old control room of the Madeira Electric Company. And up there you can see all the breakers to isolate different regions of the island. Wonderful. Well, we're saying goodbye to Madeira, and we're going to say hello to Porto Santos. This is the marina at Porto Santos. In the distance there against the far breakwater you can see the ferry, and there's the yacht haven. It's actually not got much room for bigger boats, and Fiona's considered big. Fiona's out there in the harbour on a mooring. This This is a unique little volcano, I remember from my last visit to Porto Santos. This building here is where Christopher Columbus lived, according to the Chamber of Commerce. So we'll go and look inside. This is in the garden of Columbus's house, but of course they just think this is roughly where he lived at the time. They didn't have the feeling that they should be keeping it for 500 years or more. So the museum is pretty corny. And what looks like the most interesting room you can't go in. Up there. We've got some pictures that look interesting, but you're not allowed in. And here's one of the other rooms, which of course has got no resemblance to when he lived there, including of course the new ceiling. So all a bit of a sizz, whatever. The bell sounds a bit cracked on that church. This is the church that's in front of Christopher Columbus's house, which is down that little alley there. If you believe the commerce people, where he actually lived is a bit dubious. It was all a long time ago. But anyway, this is the town square in Porto Santos. And this is what the Algarve looks like. It's a tourist trap. And the hotels are very dominant. The marina seems very luxurious. This is our slip right here, and you can see we've got restaurants, toilets, showers and everything within about 100 yards. So I think we'll be very comfortable here. This is the walled city of Faro. Here's the wall. It took me a while to find this gate to get in. Of course, beyond it is a whole new city full of hotels and shops and everything. There in the middle is the marina, which you can only get to by walking right round it. There is a bridge, but one of the trains use it. Here's the train track. And there, out there is where if we'd come by boat we'd have had to anchor. But we didn't. We came to Vila Moura and I took the bus here. I'm at an archaeological site in Vila Moura, and here they've got remains of habitation going back to the Romans in the 1st century and finally winding up with the Moors in the 8th or 9th, I guess. So right here is the excavated entrance to a villa. This was the door, the main door here, and then went up into the main living area of the villa, which looks very nice. And here are some of the walls of bedrooms and things like that. This is the public sauna. They would heat water and steam here, and many people would congregate. And then of course just over there was the pool, so you could get a swim and then get blasted with hot air or hot steam. And then just over here, beyond this fence, was the original dock area where the water came up to the docks and there were warehouses and things like that, but they've not been excavated yet. This is a chapel in a church in Faro, which is, the walls are constructed of human bones, presumably the monks that lived and worshipped here for many centuries. And now the poor guy's propping up a wall. This is the altar of the church, so it's got the chapel of bones in the back. It's extremely baroque. And the room just there, with all sorts of statues of martyred saints bleeding. Don't know why the Catholics, some of them anyway, are going for this gore. I know I've read stories of kids brought up with Catholic parents who've been frightened to death of going to church. Anyway, here it is in all its glory. This is a shot of the marina, the main commercial drag, basically U-shaped. There's that street down there that's got a lot of shops and restaurants. And then as we come around the corner, the middle street, the bottom of the U, is almost entirely restaurants on both sides.
I want the milk.
We try and appeal to English visitors. And here you can see their idea of what will attract them.
Why is like all of that
And here's another view of the Praia da Racha, and interesting rock formations. Looking to the west, just across there near that cape is Lagos, which will be our next port. And then from there we'll scoot round Cape St Vincent and go north towards Lisbon. At one time, this whole bank was filled with factories that canned sardines. There's a very interesting museum just down there. You can see the chimney. And it provided most of the economic stimulus to the area. Now, only a few remain. I'll see if I can get a shot of this factory chimney with the stalks on it. There. On the way into town we passed an old building every day, which it turned out was an abandoned convent. It had enormously thick walls that ran all the way around the building, and so I often wondered, was it to keep the nuns in or to keep the outsiders out? This is our arrival in Lagos, our last port on the Algarve, and here's the marina.
This is August Marina speaking, over.
And it turns out that we have to go through this bridge, which they will open for us so we can get into the marina. Opening the bridge there. Tim, Neil are casting off, and there's a guy waiting to go through. We'll let him go through first, seeing we're tied up. He can leave first. I guess we're on our way. Are we free?
Yes.
Okay. The coast near Lagos is riddled with sea caves that must have been formed over many, many centuries. The local entrepreneurs run a small boat into them, which is very exciting. The touristy part of Algarve is full of buskers, and this guy at Lagos really caught my fancy.
I love you so much.
Lagos. Oh, sorry. This is the port of Sinch, spelt curiously enough S-I-N-E-S, signs in English. Anyway, there's the fishing port, there's the marina, the owner's tucked in there somewhere, and beyond that is the commercial port. There's a lot of commercial traffic, tankers, freighters, and I just walked up this hill and I'm going to visit the castle, which you can see here. So, got a few guns there to protect the harbour. So, let's see. And here's one of Portugal's heroes, Vasco da Gama, who rounded the Cape of Good Hope and founded the Portuguese Empire in India. I ought to remember just who this person is here on the horse, but I forget. Anyway, we'll walk up to that arch and get ourselves some coffee and a pasteleria. Here's the iconic tram, the streetcar of Lisbon. And here we are in the pasteleria, and here's Tim getting his coffee. So we're all set for a tour of Lisbon. A living statue. Tim and I have arrived in Sintra, and there's the iconic palace. Inside the palace, I believe that the king and queen of Portugal used this as a summer place. This was known as the Galleon Room because of the paintings of ships on the ceiling. Nice view of the what's called the Prince's Garden. And this is an ornate room with quite a respectable ceiling. This is inside the kitchen, and you can see there are the unique chimneys that form the spectacular towers on the outside. Wow, that's the top. This is the keep of the Moorish castle, one of the high points, built in the 900s or something, not sure when, and it doesn't say. We're now coming to the Palace of Penna, which is one hell of a hike up from the road way down there. This is an early telephone exchange installed in the Palace of Penna. This was originally intended as a billiard room, but now it's just an open space for rather elaborate chandeliers. Getting ready for Christmas here. There's the Ferris wheel going up, and then there's a meeting of yacht clubs here. You can see there's tons of stuff for sale. This is a Russian ship visiting Cascais. Not sure what it's a replica of, but it's a replica, it's not an original wooden square rigger. It's called the Standard, a replica of a 1703 frigate. Cascais Marina, January 2018. We're back for the second part of the 17 to 18 cruise. Two crew have joined the boat. They're both veterans of previous trips. Andy there, who sailed in the Baltic, and Tom, who crossed the Atlantic.
Twice.
Twice, that's true. Yes.
Double-handed.
Yep. We are installing a new cable for the radar, and here's Andy feeding it down through the radar post.
This is Eric pulling through the new connector cable to the radar. Eric lying back, comfortable as anything, pulling away on the cable.
Okay, that's as far as that can go without you being...
The Marina de Cascais, Portugal. Tom is painting the castle on the harbour.
That's the Fiona.
And the Fiona will appear magically in there.
The only boat.
Well, we arrived in Funchal. It was a rough ride from Cascais, and who should show up the next day but Louise, an old crew member who sailed to many places, but this time she was smart enough to fly in. And there's Fiona. We're in a town called Santana and having carnival today. Of course, it's early February, 4th, I think. So that's traditional, the time of carnival. And we had a buffet lunch, and the tour driver gave us roughly an hour to see the carnival. Louise eating lunch at a little alley in the old part of Funchal. She had an omelette. This is Fiona approaching Salvagem Grande, moored in the Salvagem Islands, a pretty desolate spot, and also with the weather the way it is now you'd think we're in Newfoundland. Those are the warden's houses there. Well, this is Cargaroso Cove on Salvage and Grande. We managed to get to shore there. There's our dinghy, and there's Fiona on the mooring. I'm climbing up to the plateau at the top of Salvage and Grande. I'm clearly having problems with my balance. It's quite a steep slope actually. Salvage and Grande is famous for the migrating birds that stop there. Unfortunately, we went there for the right season. Andy and I have made it to the top at the plateau, and there's a cairn at the north end. Very desolate, not much life at all, and the only problem is getting down again. We're just completing the passage from the Salvagin Islands. Took a little over a day. You can see the snow on El Teide. We've just been debating the geology of this cliff which overlooks the marina at La Gomorra at San Sebastian. We're saying it's the sort of thing that inspired Darwin to say that a certain bishop, whose name we can't remember, was wrong when he said the world was about 6,000 years old. That it must be a bit longer than that for all this stuff to get laid down. Anyway, this is El Hierro, a small island, the most southerly of the Canaries. And we're tied up, and amazingly enough, as we arrived, a German rally sponsored by the European Insurance something came. You can see all these German boats. And we also picked up a hitchhiker, Margot, who's bumming around the islands, and spent the night sleeping in the cockpit. And that there, the white thing, is the road to Valverde, which we'll go on in a few minutes to take a bus. Looks like rain later. So why don't you say a few words, Margot, for the assembled audience?
All right. Hello, I'm Margot. I'm from Poland, and I am traveling and looking for a sailing boat. So, cheers.
You see terraced agriculture all over the islands. There must be millions of man-years in making these terraces, but this is a view you don't get too often. From the top, you can see the fertile soil held in by stony walls that step up. And we've been struggling against foul winds, adverse winds, more or less the whole trip from Canaries. But anyway, this hasn't daunted Tom, who has taken the chance, seeing the weather's not bad, to sketch in the cabin here.
Yeah, Moby Dick. I mean, the whale hits Fiona.
Okay. Most of the sketches and drawings have Fiona in them, like this one here. There's one over there. A sperm whale jumping out, but there's no Fiona on that one. And I think we've got one stuck to the headliner. Two of them stuck to the headliner. All of these done since we left Cascais. Tom is sketching, and we're under power. We're using the last of our fuel. The logic being that we'll never get a better mileage than this, with absolutely no wave action at all. But we won't have the fuel to get to Mindelo. So sometime tonight we'll turn off the engine and just leave 5 gallons the last 10 miles plus the port, and we'll hope a wind comes up for the gap between when we turn the engine off and when we're within 10 miles of Mindelo. That's the logic. There they are. We're refueling at the dock at the marina here, and across the way there's a noise you don't hear too often, except in third world countries. Those are people chipping rust with a hammer. We've rounded the south end of St Anthony, this island here, and there's now nothing ahead in the whole Atlantic until we get to the West Indies. We're in the wind shadow of the island at the moment. You can see the jib just fluttering around, but another 5 or 10 miles should fix that. It's a very desolate island. There was no sign of habitation on the coast as we sail by. You can see we're running down with the trades, northeast trades, and the flying fish has landed on deck, much to Andy's amazement, as he's never seen one before. Why don't you give us your impression? There it is, right by the dinghy there.
Yes, I see.
There. Okay, that's his first flying fish.
Yeah.
His first sailing in the tropics. Here you see the guys rigging the whisker pole. We need the pole if we want to put the jib out to run downwind, which is the commonest wind in this part of the ocean. And what you do is you rig lines to it when it's lying flat on deck, then we haul it up, and then ultimately we pull the sail out to the end of the whisker pole. Okay, do you want to come and cleat this, Andy? The pole is firmly held, and we're now pulling out the clew of the jib with a winch to get it out all the way. Again. This time taking a noon side.
Don't help with the noon side.
Just thought I'd take a picture of the Sargasso Sea. Let's see the Sargasso weed here.
That looks like a decent bit, yeah.
We have a problem that the Aries has chafed its lines, and we're going to rig new ones. Victor the Vane is connected to the steering wheel by means of ropes that go through sheaves. Unfortunately, in a long voyage, chafe on the sheaves is very common, and it's something we do fairly often, is to rig new rope by shoving it through holes there and getting it round the sheaves and hoping that it lasts for another few weeks. We're arriving in St Lucia. You can see it there on the horizon, and Tom is getting ready to run up the courtesy flag. There we are, all legal. Here's a somewhat closer view of St Lucia, Pigeon Island, that cone-shaped thing to the north, and there's the rest of the coast. We saw a charter boat schooner, and a couple of sailboats, otherwise it's been, and one fishing boat, otherwise it's been very quiet. We're in Castries, the capital of St Lucia, and many years ago, 50, I think Iona tied up somewhere over there, which is now part of the cruise ship dock. Andy's trying to find a hat that replaced the one that blew over the side on the way to St Lucia, a couple of weeks ago now. There's a little party developing before we leave
Don't worry about it.
St Lucia for Martinique.
So I'll fly away. So glad when this life is over, I'll fly away to a house on God's celestial shores. I'll fly away.
We
put the dinghy in the water and we're heading over to Pigeon Island. There's a fort on it that was built by the British to monitor French activities in Martinique, and then in World War II it served as a radio station.
We're touring the ruins of the British fort on Pigeon Island. This is what's left of the barracks here. Destroyed in a hurricane in 1817 and rebuilt in 1824, it says. And it's amazing. I don't think the hurricanes knocked these walls down. They look too substantial to me. But something knocked them down. And it wasn't the French, because by the 1820s the war with France was over.
We are sailing into Saint-Pierre on Martinique. It's very famous because this volcano, Mount Pelée, erupted in 1902 and completely destroyed it, killed 30,000 people. There was one person left in the jail, otherwise everybody was killed. When Edith and I came here in the 60s, it was completely deserted, but now it's been rebuilt and it's quite a thriving community.
Yep.
Do you see it?
What am I looking at?
The moon right on top of the hill.
Oh yeah, true.
Wow, that's incredible.
There's the moon.
That's a picture there about seeing it.
This is inside the museum at Saint-Pierre dedicated to the eruption. There's a bell that was melted by the heat, and they've got lots of watches where the hands look like a Dali painting.
This is the bay at Terre de Haute in the Ile de Saints. And Fiona is down there somewhere. The ferry comes into that jetty. And we've just marched up this bloody great hill. Here's the hill we marched up. And in the distance you can actually see Dominica there, very faintly on the horizon. Finally made it to the top. And there's the rooster welcoming us. This is inside the really great museum at Fort Napoleon. Here's a statue of a lieutenant trying to take a sight with an octant. This is a very nice model of the Ville de Paris, which was towed to England after the battle but sank halfway across the Atlantic. And here's the Comte de Grasse, who commanded the French fleet at the Battle of the Saints. And this cabinet here, we've got big guns, things like that. It's a great museum, except everything's in French. This is the Battle of the Saints, one assumes. And here's another beautiful ship's model, which is English. It's called Formidable. A few more buildings of Nelson's era there. See the columns that supported, presumably, a roof at some stage.
On the way to St Martin, pass a new station on the starboard beam. This is what Serafina's, the lovely breakfast place in St Martin, looked like in 2016 when we were there on our last cruise. And then in 2017 Irma hit, and this is what it looks like today on our cruise.
You can see the things Pretty devastated.
This is a dinghy ride in Simpson Lagoon, St. Martin. You can see the wreckage left by Hurricane Irma. Condos, boats all over the place. It was a complete disaster.
You can see that the building's destroyed. Totally destroyed. Boats that were completely written off, really damaged in Irma or Maria. I'm not sure which hurricane was responsible for these. This boat clear is half underwater. You can see the insides of the boat, all the wiring. The guys are picking up a mooring in Trellis Bay. And what's interesting is that the shoreline is littered with wrecks from the hurricane of last year. We're on Jos van Dijk, and there's the old church, which I'm afraid lost its roof in Irma. Some guys there roofing, but funnily enough, Fox's down the road looks pretty good. We're investigating the damage here at Jos van Dijk, and in fact Fox's looks like they got away with it. Of course the tree's knocked over here, the tree broken off there, but the actual bar looks very much as I remember it.
No. But he's up there. He's like, what do you mean you lost one sheet of grass? Just one. And some people like house legs, but you can't even see what.
Here we are, 6 days out from Jos van Dijk, entering St. George's Channel, Bermuda.
It's an early version of waterboarding.
This is the ferry to the dockyard from St. George's. At the moment they're discharging passengers, probably come from cruise ships at the dockyard, and we'll be taking it in the reverse direction. Lou showed up to join us for the cruise for a few days, and surprisingly enough, small cruise ships have started to use St. George's again. For a few years there were none. Now there's a small boat there.
Judge from this view, from the Commissioner's house, high in the dockyard here. This is lunch in the Frog and Onion in the dockyard at Bermuda. Andy and Lou. This is in the old buildings, which are made of massive stones of coral. This is Fiona tied up at St. George's, and you can see that Lou, who's just by the mast, is standing there, who visited us for a few days. And then
Beyond us is what used to be the Dinghy Club and then became the Cruise Centre, and now it's the Bermuda Yacht Services.
Famous beauty spot, Tobacco Bay. Well, we're about 400 miles from Fire Island, and we have a hitchhiker. According to Andy, it's the Peregrine Falcon. It's a little unstable there on the whisker pole. Looks a bit mothy. Maybe it's molting. Here's the Doughty crew. Just guided us through Fire Island Inlet. It's the 11th of May 2018 and we're returning from Portugal via Bermuda. And here we are running.
Green's right underneath the right side of the bridge span.
Yeah, I see, yeah.
Running up
I'll blame a little bit
now
like the gap between
past the inlet and heading for Robert Moses Bridge,
37 feet.
which is there. Looks like they've got some scaffolding on the bridge. Yeah, you can see there's all sorts of stuff hanging in the way here.
Little hair to the left. Yeah, you got looks good.
Well, it's 8 o'clock and we're just approaching the buoy off Blue Point here. And we said we'd be at the dock at Weeks at 8:30, so I think that's just about going to be right. Here's Can 35. This is the entrance to the Patchogue River. Here's the jetty. And the green light. And on the other side there should be a red light somewhere.
Entering the Patchogue River, we're completing our Atlantic crossing. It was Tom's 4th and his first, and believe it or not, my 27th Atlantic crossing.
Yeah, and we're coming up the river. So now we have to find Weeks's. There's dear old Weeks's, if you can see it. So I'll have to try and find the entrance to the slips. Tie up the end of the 2018 cruise.